See your Toyota dealer for great deals like up to $2,000 cash back on the full-size V8 2003 Toyota Tundra, the truck that combines toughness and safety. Hurry, don't miss up to $2,000 cash back on the 2003 Tundra. Get to Toyota's nationwide spring sales event where value begins with quality. Get the show on.
CBS Tonight.
You're invited to opening night.
The most astonishing singer of our time, Celine Dion, and the creative genius behind Cirque du Soleil team up for a spectacular event.
It will be unlike anything you've ever seen.
Live from Las Vegas, don't miss Celine's greatest all-time hits in a brand new show. Justin Timberlake hosts Celine in Las Vegas opening night live. CBS Tonight.
I can't wait to share it with you.
I love this time of year. Spring is just around the corner, and that means opening day of a brand new baseball season. And what better way to celebrate than with a traditional game of catch with someone you love? There's nothing like watching her run full speed across the fresh-cut grass, leaping through the air with her hair flying to make the perfect catch.
Your Florida Marlins are back with a whole new season and a whole new attitude. Are you ready to get back in the game?
That hurt.
We invite you to join us for a CBS 4 News special with the very latest developments in the war in Iraq. America at War Special Edition is coming up at 7 o'clock.
That's our news for now. Thanks for joining us. Right now, let's go to Dan Rather in the CBS Evening News.
Fiercest day of the war so far. Desert storm, powerful and blinding sandstorms slow the U.S.-led advance on Baghdad to a crawl. No more scenes like this on Iraqi television. The U.S. apparently pulls the plug. The battle for Basra. Reports of a civilian uprising against Saddam as some Iraqis nearby get water for the first time in a week. And Americans heading home. The wounded. And through the morning fog, those who gave all they had.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. Tonight, continuing coverage of America at War.
Good evening. The war became bloodier and more complicated today. Elements of U.S.-led forces are fighting one of Saddam Hussein's best Iraqi divisions not far from Baghdad. But weather has slowed and complicated the battle. Here are some of the headlines. A huge sandstorm held back U.S. Army and Marine forces now operating just southwest of Baghdad. There were more heavy airstrikes in and near the Iraqi capital. Baghdad government-run TV suddenly went off the air. There was fierce fighting in two Iraqi cities to the south. U.S. Marines are still engaged in Nasiriyah, a strategic Euphrates River crossing, and British forces are still fighting for the oil center of Basra. Two British soldiers were killed by friendly fire when one British tank apparently mistakenly fired on another. British military forces in Basra report a civilian uprising against Saddam Hussein's government forces. And wounded U.S. troops landed in Germany as the first remains of American dead arrived home in flag-draped caskets. We have CBS News correspondents deployed with us and with U.S. and allied forces and at other key locations all around the world to bring you comprehensive war coverage. We start with David Martin with a summary at the Pentagon. David?
Dan, the Air Force blasted Iraqi TV with an experimental electromagnetic pulse device in an attempt to knock it off the air and shut down this propaganda machine, which continues to show the regime's firmly in charge and ignores the fact that the American army is almost literally at the gates.
American and British troops fought a sandstorm that took away their ability to maneuver against the Republican Guards outside Baghdad. But the U.S. still fired about 90 cruise missiles, and Navy and Air Force jets were scheduled to fly 1,400 missions. Able to refuel in flight without any worries about what the Iraqi Air Force might do, U.S. aircraft have total dominance of the sky. But until now, Iraqi leaders have been able to control the airwaves, looking calm and in charge on state television, while American POWs were shown looking downright terrified.
Why do you come?
From the moment commandos parachuted onto an airfield behind Iraqi lines, the only question has been whether the U.S. would win easy or win ugly. And it keeps getting uglier. Pentagon officials admit they have been surprised by the ferocity of the resistance put up by Saddam's Fedayeen fighters. Still more are being sent south into the rear of American and British forces where they are using human shields.
The irregulars were coming out of the village, the town towards us on the outskirts with civilians in front, forcing them ahead of them, firing at us. We can't fire back, and then just running back into the town.
If what is happening in Basra is an indicator of what is to come in Baghdad, American and British troops will have to go in and dig out a ruthless enemy.
This is the behavior of desperate men. Iraqi authorities know their days are numbered. And while the Iraqi regime is on the way out, it's important to know that it can still be brutal, particularly in the moments before it finally succumbs.
Saddam's Fedayeen can cause casualties, but they cannot, according to Rumsfeld, defeat the U.S. The fate of the Iraqi regime will be fought out with the Republican Guards on the outskirts of Baghdad, and that battle has not yet begun in earnest.
We really haven't engaged on the ground the Republican Guard divisions. We put some artillery against them, but we haven't engaged them in a classic battle, so their mettle has yet to be tested.
Today, American forces mostly did battle with a sandstorm that made it hard just to move and unsafe to fly the helicopters which give the U.S. one of its main advantages. There was nothing for it but to try to rest for the battle to come.
Despite the weather, there are new reports of fighting behind the front lines. Pentagon officials say a couple hundred Iraqis are reported killed, and for the moment at least, there are no reports of American casualties. Dan?
David Martin reporting live from the Pentagon. CBS News combat correspondent Jim Axelrod is with the Army's 3rd Infantry Division, which has seen some hard fighting today. 2 big battles took place south of Karbala, which is just southwest of Baghdad. Jim joins us now by telephone from near Najaf, where there has been a lot of fighting. Jim, what can you tell us?
Well, Dan, the first thing I can tell you about is the weather. It is nasty, it is brutal, it is relentless. A sandstorm that makes the one I reported on 2 weeks ago, which seems significant, that seems like a gentle breeze compared to what we're in the middle of right now. The temperature has dropped, it is cold, and it is harsh conditions. Many soldiers hunkered down. Although I can report in the last half hour, I have seen at least 8 flashes of artillery being fired. The officers tell me that even bad weather makes the targeting relatively unaffected. They can still target enemy positions. So they haven't had trouble with the artillery, the Paladins, and the multiple launch rocket system. It's the boots on the ground, the soldiers who must be most directly affected by the harsh conditions. One of the battles that took place today, south of Karbala, involved some engineers that were doing routine maintenance work on a bridge to make sure the tanks could with them, and they were, in their words, surprised by a group of Iraqis who came at them. They suffered no casualties, according to the report I have, and said that they did kill multiple Iraqi soldiers. One description was that, in terms of the kind of fighting going on, a white pickup truck with a AK-47 mounted on top of it drove directly at a Bradley fighting vehicle, and the Bradley just blew the pickup truck away. So the fighting wasn't fierce in terms of tactics. They didn't feel overmatched. They just felt surprised. However, they also said this group of combat engineers that was later supported by infantry also felt that they took care of business completely by the end of the day. And again, no casualties, Dan.
Jim Axelrod reporting live from near Najaf. It is now clear that launching an invasion of Iraq deep into Iraq in the middle of the sandstorm season has created some problems. Somewhere in southern Iraq tonight, in the middle of the sandstorm, is CBS's Byron Pitts. He describes what he felt and saw in a military convoy suddenly going nowhere fast.
This is Byron Pitts with the Marine 7th Regiment on the road to Baghdad. The regiment had made real progress in the past 24 hours in its travels north towards Baghdad when we were hit by this severe sandstorm. At one point, the visibility dropped down to about 5 feet. And by that time, the commander sent out the order for all the vehicles to stop.
Another beautiful day in Iraq, ain't it?
Tanks, armored personnel carriers, Humvees, trucks, all at a standstill because of this storm. So at this point, you have Marines huddled inside their vehicles. Some of them, like the armored personnel carrier I'm in, for instance, is so small that there's no room to stand, so you have 5 men laying on their backs side by side because there's no real place to move. Because the wind is so severe at this point, in order to file this report, I had to climb up on top of the armored personnel carrier, press my back against the roof, and lay down so I could get a satellite signal and also not be blown over by the wind. For now, it would seem as if Mother Nature has done what the Iraqi army could not do, and that's bring the U.S. Marine Corps to a standstill. Byron Pitts, CBS News, the U.S. Marine 7th Regiment on the road to Baghdad.
The exceptionally strong wind driving these sandstorms is hoped to diminish tomorrow after strong northwesterly winds and thunderstorms overnight. That's the general forecast. When these sandstorms are over, the weather forecasters say no new major winds are expected over most, if not all, of Iraq, or at least the next couple of days. The Battle of Basra in southern Iraq goes on. More than 1 million people live in Basra, a major oil port, Iraq's second largest city, a city now desperate for relief, especially water. CBS's Lee Cowan has more on dire straits in Basra.
The longer the battle for Basra continues, the longer its civilians are left hanging by a thread. With electricity cut and water scarce, British commanders say desperation has taken over, forcing some Iraqis into the streets with guns, not to defend their city, but to help the Allies take it.
The regime cut off water, has taken away some of the natural resources in the city, and that has become a real humanitarian concern for us.
Medicine to treat the growing number of wounded is dwindling, and if the UN's estimate is right, there's only enough food to last another 5 weeks.
A city that size cannot afford to go without electricity or water for long.
Though aid agencies have flown in plane loads of relief,
it's cooking stoves, the kerosene heaters here.
And warehouses all around Kuwait are bursting at the seams. Nothing can get to the people who need it until coalition troops have Basra under control. And tonight, that's an increasingly complicated equation.
We are not firing into the center of the city because we cannot risk the collateral damage.
And neither can the relief organizations.
In fact, aid agencies are being told not even to bother trying to amass relief supplies at the border, because the only thing that's going to be getting through here are military convoys, and that's it. And that will be the case, the Pentagon says, not for days, but for weeks.
All these things are really, just I think the beginning indicators of what could be a massive humanitarian crisis.
So massive, the UN announced tonight that it will be making the largest single request for cash in its history, some $1 billion. And even that, it admits, may only be enough to feed Iraq's population for another 6 months. Dan.
Lee Cowan reporting live from Kuwait City. Also in southern Iraq, the small Gulf port of Qasr will be a major route for relief supplies into Iraq. This includes drinking water for desperate civilians. CBS's Scott Pelley was there with Allied forces bringing the first fresh supply.
In Qasr, they came when they heard the word, water. There hadn't been any water in more than a week, and so they ran down a road as long and as miserable as a day of thirst. British and American troops poured the first humanitarian aid into Iraq, buckets at a time. Major James Thorpe runs an Army unit trying to restore life to Qasr.
Major, why do these people not have water? Basra, it's a city just north of us, is normally the location where drinking water comes from for these folks here in Qasr. As it turns out, just before the war started, approximately 4 or 5 days before it did, the water that normally flows down here via truck was turned off. By who? Well, basically by the ruling party, Ba'athist Party, and I guess Saddam Hussein.
Thorpe's civil affairs team will get water and power flowing. They want to convince Iraqis that life will improve. A man in the water line told us that the people are nervous. They think Saddam is coming back. So more than just water, civil affairs hopes to give them confidence.
Make no mistake, this is combat relief aid. It was just 2 hours ago that there was shooting in this neighborhood. But the Americans and the British feel it is so urgent to reach out to the Iraqi people that they've decided this is a risk they're willing to take.
The British brigadier in charge of the area, Jim Dutton, says the port at Qasr will open in another day. Humanitarian aid will fill the port, but getting it through to a desperate people is something else. Once you bring the goods into the port, though, isn't it difficult to move things out in convoys? The roads aren't safe.
The roads aren't completely safe. I mean, there are still some bad guys out there who are trying to make a point. So we're going to have to find ways of distributing it.
It was not all happiness in the waterline. One man said, "I have 6 children. We have no food or electricity. Why have you done this to us?" But most were grateful. Before today, almost no one here dared to leave their homes.
We now want to rebuild Iraq. We want to go to a situation where they are stable, they can take care of themselves within the next couple of months, and we as Americans can pull out, and the British.
A couple of months is surely optimistic, but this was a start. One man filling a jug asked, "Is it all over?" The answer for most of Iraq is certainly no. But in one town today, there were many steps down that road. Scott Pelley, CBS News, Qasr, Iraq.
Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, they call themselves men of sacrifice. Their job is making others sacrifice for Saddam.
Cheerios and strawberries have finally gotten together. New Berry Burst Cheerios. Real strawberries, together with those classic O's. For a taste you can really fall in love with. New Berry Burst Cheerios in both strawberry and triple berry. For 2 out of 3 adults with high cholesterol, diet and exercise may not lower it enough. But adding Lipitor can lower your total cholesterol 29 to 45%. Lipitor is not for everyone, including people with liver disease or possible liver problems, and women who are nursing, pregnant, or may become pregnant. Simple blood tests are needed to check for liver problems. Tell your doctor about other medications you are taking, or if you experience muscle pain or weakness, as they may be a sign of serious side effects. So take the next step. Ask your doctor if Lipitor is right for you.
Pay bills online free with free checking from Bank of America. Higher standards.
New Lemon Twist V8 juice has a light and refreshing squeeze of lemon. It's another delicious way to get your full serving of vegetables. In fact, sometimes it's the only way. Lemon Twist V8, a new way to drink smarter.
As U.S. forces struggle in the north toward Baghdad to fully engage the Republican Guard, behind them, other American and British units find themselves battling Iraqis in civilian clothing, well-armed, determined, and loyal to Saddam Hussein. Who are they? CBS's Mark Phillips has some answers.
However much coalition commanders say they anticipated the resistance they're encountering, even in areas frontline units rolled through days ago, the stubbornness of those holding out has been a surprise. At first, it was thought Republican Guard units had moved south to add backbone to the less dedicated regular army. But now these people are being seen as the reason. The Fedayeen, literally the men of sacrifice. Their main job, though, is to encourage the sacrifice of others. Organized originally as thugs and enforcers for Saddam's Ba'athist Party, the uniforms they wear in public are designed to instill fear and discourage dissent. face the enemy's bullets or theirs.
I think their job there is to watch that nobody thinks of running or defecting. If they don't go forward, they get shot in the back by them. These are very nasty individuals.
And they were recruited by one of the nastiest of them all, Saddam's eldest son, Uday, famous for his ruthlessness. The Fedayeen are thought to number about 20,000, although some estimates are higher, and are drawn largely from Saddam's home territory around the town of Tikrit. They are so closely aligned with the regime, they have no option but to fight.
What is happening at the moment is increasing that dedication, and you could say that this is the moment they've been waiting for.
The Fedayeen are just one part of Saddam's very large and very entrenched security apparatus, and they face a choice. Either fight to the death against the invading armies, or face the very likely violent retribution of a population they have repressed so efficiently for so long. Dan?
Mark Phillips, live in Kuwait City. Saudi Arabia called today for an end to the war in Iraq. The Saudi foreign minister urged the U.S. and Iraq to, quote, sacrifice for peace instead of sacrifice for war. But he offered no new proposals for making that wish come true. The Saudi government has quietly supported the U.S. some in the war, despite strong anti-war, in some cases anti-American sentiment among the Saudi people. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, casualties of war. Wounded Americans arrive in Germany for treatment as the first of the dead make their final trip home.